foremost, I would like to begin by marking myself safe from Cyclone Ashley. Those of you who are not from Romania have no idea what I'm talking about. If you look on a weather map or something, you'll see that nothing particularly interesting happened in Romania in the last 24 hours. But if you're Romanian, you know what I'm talking about. So there's been a psychological operation in the past 24 hours, actually in the past week, telling us that there's this huge cyclone coming in from where, no idea, because we're not exactly landlocked, but like our only exit to the sea is through the Black Sea, which is a landlocked sea, so to say. It just communicates through a narrow strait to the Marmara Sea and then onwards to the Mediterranean. So it's almost like having a tropical cyclone coming in from the Caspian Sea, being in Uzbekistan and having, or in Kazakhstan, and awaiting that amazing cyclone with a hurricane name coming in from the sea. So yeah, there was nothing in particular. We've had a dry summer, and now autumn is setting in. We've had some rain yesterday. Absolutely nothing interesting. But the way it was framed, it's really hard for me to think that this was incompetence. I mean, like, weather is not something that you can just produce your own version of. Everything is everything is international. You have these weather satellites, you have all of these weather apps. It's easy for you to know what the weather is like in any region of the world. However, the Romanian authorities staged this, I could even call it a psyop. So in the past week, um, we've had military meteorologists coming in and saying that the storm that's coming is going to be the worst that they've ever seen in 20 years. There hasn't even been a storm, we've just had some rain, not that much wind. Um, they preemptively evacuated tens of villages, even from counties which have no significant flood risk. And the media tried to convince us that the apocalypse was incoming. Um, they actually presented every puddle in the street, every, I don't know, fallen tree. There were like maybe 3 trees that fell in the whole country, as like a sign confirming the current ongoing apocalypse and so on. So yeah, I have no idea why this psychological operation was staged here. Of course, we've received this. Uh, there's this emergency notification system called Raw Alert, and we've received on our mobile phones 2 such messages like do not get out of your house after 3 p.m. If you're in Bucharest. Because like after 8 there was a bit of rainfall. So I have no idea why they went to such amazing lengths, what they wanted to prove, or was this some sort of a cover up for something else, or I have no idea what this was all about. But like, and of course the official fact checkers, the thought police that's on social media, started accusing those that did not believe in the storm that they were conspiracy theorists and so on, even as the storm was ongoing, and it was obvious that there wasn't much of it anyway. So yeah, it was the whole psyops all over again, just like with the pandemic, just like with the war in Ukraine. The same people who are paid by the embassy of the United States just act as some sort of speech police and thought police, and demonize everybody who just refuses to be a retard and refuses to buy into what the authorities and the media are saying. And they just use their own brain, even though, yeah, you don't need an IQ above 75 to notice that there isn't much of a storm, and that it's not windy, and that there's no tropical cyclone Ashley. coming your way, especially since it was not presented on any other in any other weather forecast of any country around us. It was just a pure Romanian invention. So yeah, but like yeah, these things become more and more intrusive. Like okay, during the vaccine crusade, it was hard to argue. Okay, yeah, there were quite a lot of people who just used their common sense and realized that those vaccines, first of all, they were not properly tested, and second of all, they were not really necessary since you got COVID anyway, and that natural immunity exists. And once you got exposed to the virus, the vaccine would not do anything for you positively, let's say. But still, you had to argue with statistics. It was a kind of a lengthy chain of arguments then. But now, like I mean, these psyops that happen in this periphery of the empire, they become more and more insidious, and they affect your daily life to such an extent that they are staging these psyops as like that that you can just contradict by looking out the window. You just look out the window, and on TV, and like the authorities tell you on your mobile phone on these emergency alerts, do not believe your lying eyes, trust us. you know so yeah, it's becoming more, and of course they pay these idiots, these absolute retards, to be the fact checkers and to be the thought police. And they are, of course, they receive prizes, they're like the civil society and whatever from these American sponsored NGOs. And like yeah, they're always backing each other up, and they're presented in the media as like the trusted news analysts and so on. And yeah, they're always there with a stick, and like to just hit you when you don't believe your lying eyes. When you believe your lying eyes and don't believe them, and don't believe what the American embassy wants you to think. So yeah. But apart from this, sorry for the huge rant, but like this is going completely to absurd lengths. I don't know what the next psyop will be, if they've gone so far as to basically lie to you that it's raining when it's not, and that there's strong wind, and when the wind is not blowing. I mean, if they've gone to such lengths to psyop you and to brainwash you, what will the next operation be? And of course, the people in charge, like the people running the operations, are the same ones who are running the COVID scam operation. The um, Department for Emergency Services and so on. So what will the next thing be? Stage an earthquake? Nothing will move, and they'll just say, we've just had a category 8 earthquake, and like everything is in rubble. You didn't feel any tremors. You look out the window, everything seems to be still standing. But no, they'll come and evacuate you and put you in some camp and say, no, because we've had this huge earthquake, and if you don't believe in earthquakes, you don't believe in science and whatever. So probably this is going to be the next stage of retardation that we're going to go through here at the periphery of empire. And I don't know why this is happening. I can have some hunches, I can have some some guesses, but yeah. Anyway, so what I wanted to talk to you today in this episode, even though my rant took quite a long time, is the fact that going through Richard's videos, which I also highly recommend you should also do, I came across this very interesting model. Of course, it's a model rather well studied in economics, and I've also studied it in university, but it was not presented exactly in this angle. So I suggest you binge on his videos, and the model I was referring to is what happens with the trade between countries who have who are who have a trade surplus, and those that have a trade deficit. So basically, Richard's argument is that trade should be more or less balanced, because trade, if it is more or less balanced, it means that both countries are getting something in return. And if it's not exactly balanced, if a country trades with another country at a constant deficit or at a constant surplus, the surplus country is basically giving away goods and services, and the deficit country is just giving away currency. Okay, you could say that with that currency you can buy other stuff in other parts of the world, you can trade, whatever. Well, there are some caveats to this. So one problem is that, of course, since trade is carried out in US dollars, perhaps in euros, some of it if it's with the European Union. What happens theoretically in this model? It's well, no, if it's unbalanced, then yeah, it comes to war, as Michna, my commentator, says, but in several steps. So if it's unbalanced, the country with the surplus has a surplus of currency of the other country, or of dollars and euros, let's say. And the economics says that, yeah, if you have a trade account deficit, you have to have a capital account surplus, and vice versa, because the balance of payments needs always to be balanced, because that's why it's called the balance. So what does it mean that you have a capital account surplus? The capital account is made up of all the investments that you made in other countries minus the investments that other countries or economic agents from other countries made in your country. So if you have this excess of currency because you deliver too many products, too many goods and services, and there was no correspondent flow of goods and services coming your way from the other country, just a flow of currency, with that currency, theoretically, you buy up stuff. But what happens if the counterparty is America or the European Union and you're China or you're Russia? Yeah, it's easy to say you buy up stuff, but they won't let you because they allow trade with you. I mean, pre-sanctions paradigm. I'm now talking to the, let's say, pre-2022 world. Now it's even worse, but like pre-2022, why was it a rip-off? Because what could you buy? In theory, you should be able to buy businesses there, buy up infrastructure. China did a bit of that, but with huge scandals. Many such investments were blocked by the European Commission or by the national governments at the behest of the United States, of course. China did manage to buy a few ports, to build some highways that it could then operate. But generally speaking, the Chinese were not allowed to buy real assets, real productive assets. Because, yeah, there are all these barriers, And the same in the United States, like the US goes crazy whenever a foreign country buys up anything regarding infrastructure, when they have business subsidiaries operating there and so on, the Huawei scandal, the sanctions, anyway. So what could the Chinese buy and the Russians? Well, the only thing that they could buy for their capital account, the only investment assets that they could buy were treasury bonds. So basically, their only option with that extra currency that they held was to basically prop up the US debt machine or the Euro debt machine, to buy up treasury bonds and to make sure that the United States government has enough money from its lenders, even though it is hostile to its main lender, which is China. Basically, through not allowing the Chinese to buy up real assets in the United States, the U.S. made sure that the Chinese would only buy up financial assets. And through buying up those financial assets being not stock, because stock imply ownership, and the United States again would not be too happy with the Chinese owning stocks in US companies, so they could only buy bonds, and those bonds would be from the US government. And the US debt is so huge that there is in economics we were always propagandized with this this notion that the US will always be solvent because it will always be able to print money. Yeah, of course, sure, but right now the printing money leads to inflation, and right now the United States, there are many voices inside the United States which say, the debt is so big and our main debtors are hostile nations, so we can just choose to not pay up, we can just choose to not service our foreign debt from some point onwards. And now we come to the post 2022 world. So first of all, these countries from the, let's say, developing world were pretty much screwed over through the fact that they were forced to, their only use of the dollars was to buy up treasury debts of the countries that they have this strongest trade relationship with, which were the United States and the European Union. So basically, to finance their debts, and in this regard, to accumulate this huge stockpile of debt which might never be repaid. This is one thing. The second thing is, since foreign monetary flows, since these currency flows are in US dollars, they always have to pass through US banks. This is how the euro dollar circuit is put up. So if you make any transaction in US dollars, it has to at some point pass through a US bank, which means it is sanctionable. So if the United States decides that it wants to restrict that payment, to sanction that payment, or to sanction payments from that country in general, it can just do so, because those flows are diverted, are always need to pass through the issuer, through the banks of the issuer, which is in this case the United States. So not only is are debt payments sanctionable. For example, Russia after 2002 wanted to pay its current tranche of the current installment of its foreign debt, and because it was subject to sanctions, it was just unable to, even though it had the money. The same thing could happen to China, and the problem is, not only that the U.S. could block payments, it could also seize assets, as it did in the case of Russia after 2022. So it is in the U.S.'s interest, if it wants to get its hands on 70 trillion, as it was in the case of, as it is in the case of Chinese reserves abroad, and yeah, all the money that is in Chinese banks abroad and the central bank and all of these things, and foreign assets. So if the U.S. wants to just get its hands on Chinese assets, international Chinese assets, it can just do so by seizing them through the pretense of some sanction. You know, just like this proxy war was instigated against Russia, and as a consequence of Russia invading Ukraine, all the Russian assets in the West were seized, confiscated, just like, yeah, from now on it's no longer yours, it's mine. The same thing could happen to China, and of course it's something very lucrative for the United States to operate this way. You know, just militarize Taiwan. Taiwan is a part of China. Uh, if China wants to gain hold of that secessionist separatist province, the US can always claim that as a pretense to say, okay, we have to punish Chinese imperialism, whatever, even though it is imperialism directed to a part of its own country. And from that point onwards, to create the same web of sanctions as it was in the case of Russia. So stop allowing Chinese banks to use the international payment system that the West is using, so SWIFT. Confiscate reserves of the Chinese central bank, of all the Chinese banks, of all the Chinese enterprises operating abroad. So, yeah, as Richard also says, China is very cautious regarding the military solution in Taiwan, because it is way more exposed to this international financial risk than Russia was. So Russia was able to handle this sanction wave quite nicely. But China, because it has so much more international exposure, is less likely to handle it so smoothly. So that's why China is way more cautious to choose for a military solution to the Taiwan problem. However, this is why the United States made sure to bring in the biggest warmonger in Taiwan in power, and to accelerate the militarization of Taiwan, just so as to push China, to provoke China into acting just like Russia had to do, to just act earlier rather than later, because later might be just too late. The damage might be too high. Taiwan is very, very close to the Chinese shore, and if it gets American long-range weapons, it can bomb the main Chinese cities, as it was in the case with Russia. That if Ukraine gets weapons with ranges long enough, they might reach Moscow and start bombarding Moscow. Well, in the case of Taiwan, it's even more dangerous, because most of the important Chinese cities are coastal cities, and they're all on the east coast, so facing Taiwan basically. So yeah, this is what I wanted to point out, that even in the pre-sanction era, trade between the surplus countries and the deficit countries was not exactly fair, because since the deficit countries did not open up their economies to being bought up by the Russians and the Chinese, or the Arabs, or whatever, the Iranians, then the only thing that these could buy, that developing countries could buy, were, on the one hand, luxury goods for the oligarchy, and this is also something that propped up European industries quite a lot. The biggest European companies, this bag maker, Louis Vuitton. This is the most valuable European company, so this is basically what Europe is good for, just ensuring the prosperity of the elites in developing countries, make sure that they use those hard-earned foreign currency to buy up some luxury goods for their plutocrats, and to have to buy treasury bills, because regular investments are just barred for economic agents from those developing countries. So yeah, this is what I wanted to tell you today. Sorry for the big rant about the weather. I hope I'll not have to do, I don't know, I hope in 3 months time I'll not have to do another rant about how we are told that this big earthquake is going on and we cannot feel anything. It's an asymptomatic earthquake, just like we had the asymptomatic cyclone. So yeah, I hope our authorities will not go to such amazing lengths to brainwash us. But yeah, who knows what the future will bring, so stay tuned. Bye.